So the purpose of my being live right about now is to have discussion surrounding the rebuilding or your rebuilding post Hurricane Melissa. So leading up to this live is a case where I had indicated my focus is to host a series of live to share some insights that can be really of benefit to persons who are really in desired mode and keen on trying to rebuild mentally, uh, you know, infrastructure wise, and even, physically. Now, with that being said, the means of which I'm going to be going through this discussion is basically to keep it as realistic as possible and to basically keep it within the lines that persons can actually relate to. And even so, this can be a life that pretty much can be timeless in its state. So, how I'm going to go forward with this discussion, and just for you to be aware, the approach I'm taking for today, or in terms of the title, is building a strong livelihood post Melissa, and the focus is on entrepreneurship and job market. Now, if it's a case that you're just coming across OB Fitness, whether you're in Jamaica or not, and this is your first time coming across OB Fitness, my name is Oshane Bryant, and I am the founder of Oshane Bryant Fitness Limited. It is a fitness entity in terms of how it is registered, and the means and the focus of Oshane Bryant Fitness is geared around sustainable fitness solutions or sustainable lifestyle solutions. In other words, long-term solutions. If you're not aware about my background, it encompasses geology, geography. There is biology courses. I also have an American Council Exercise Certified personal trainer certification. I'm a licensed martial arts and self-defense instructor, Kokibo Martial Arts. And I am also a close protection officer with the Caribbean Security Academy, to name a few. In terms of my means, where it comes to what I provide in the context of this discussion, it is me coming from the backbone of being an entrepreneur who built OB Fitness from the ground up in Jamaica and did so with pretty much little or nothing at all. So when I observe what is taking place across the landscape in Jamaica, especially in the hard-hit areas, and I can see where basically there are the towns, there are communities, there are households have been brought to their knees. It is critical now that individuals such as myself can use what it is that I can do to try and empower an individual. And if you just going to come across this live, it is imperative that you can be able to forward whatever kind of insight you gather. So as said, it is building a strong livelihood in Jamaica post Hurricane Melissa, and the focus is on helping to build fellow entrepreneurs and or persons who are keen on joining the job market. Now, for you to be able to have a grasp on becoming an entrepreneur, or basically trying to rebuild your livelihood, if it's a case that your livelihood was decimated through the passing of Hurricane Melissa, and or it's a case that you have the means and the desire of entering into the marketplace for jobs, let's just say local Jamaica and even beyond Jamaica itself, then in that respect, there are certain key phases or key things that you must consider. And my approach is to basically expose you to these. So one such is to have a grasp of your environment or your current reality. And the current reality, as stated in terms of how I am discussing, is along the lines of what is more than likely the reality of that individual whose house has been decimated, whose livelihood in farming, or it could be fishing, or it could even just be a case that they had another small business within, let's just say, for example, the town of Black River, or let's just say certain other areas in Westmoreland. If it's a case that is their reality, then that is understanding what is the nature of the environment. So the environment is such where it could be within their community, the utilities have been cut off. It could be a case that in terms of access to certain basic amenities for life to be sustained, that has been now pretty much eradicated. And it basically is a case where they have no form of connection to supply chain, etc. By having an understanding about the community or the environment that surrounds you as an individual who may have the desire of being an entrepreneur and or basically entering into the job market, it gives you a better understanding about how to position yourself when it comes to you making a pitch and or making a strategic plan towards being able to take action. Uh, so in the physical environment or the geo environment, it gives you that stronghold in terms of knowing where you stand. Now, in terms of the geo environment, I just want to state that what it is that we are seeing in the context of what we have experienced through Hurricane Melissa is, it's no longer a thing that you can say is like a 1 in a 100 year event. This is now a reality that you can say is like a 1 in a 10 year, 1 in a 5 year, because if we look at how the hurricane season is moving over the past 10, 20 years, we have been seeing like on regular occurrence, category 4 plus hurricanes. And it's a case now that what I'm saying with this, unlike, say, for example, war-torn cities or countries who, when you say that, we have arrived at a truce, you can say that, okay, let's focus on rebuilding because we have now, moved away from war. When we think about what Melissa has done, it is a situation now where we have to be like, boy, Hurricane Atlantic season is going to be the reality again come 2026. How can we build our resilience for 2026? And when you sit down and you pray it within the context of time, you're going to realize that we don't really have that much time as a country to say, what, we're going to be able to reinforce our cities or reinforce our towns and reinforce communities, reinforce parishes. And this is why, we say that as a small island developing state, Jamaica that is, we are highly vulnerable to climatic shocks. And Melissa is now just this stark highlight, a stark reminder. And it is very unfortunate that we now are in the position we're in. But with that being said, as individuals, as a collective, as a country of people, we have the power within to be able to not just rise, but to basically be able to be resilient with the nature of the environment. So at the beginning of it all, we must understand what is the reality of our environment. We are in the relief phase now. We're talking about going into recovery. We have to be aware that in terms of relief is short term. If we're thinking about recovery, we basically have to have it be that within us, we have the means of sustainably being self-sustained. And this is why, in terms of where I'm starting from with this, is letting you understand that where we are or where you are, you must be fully aware, cognizant of your environment, as said. And then in so doing, understand that the nature of the risk that the environment poses, it is not a case now that we're thinking about a 1 in a 10 year storm that could be another Melissa. We have to think about it as being, another year, next year around the corner. So if we intend to live in Jamaica every year following 2025, we all, and as a collective and individual, have to be fully cognizant that this is the reality, that the climate shocks and the intensity of these storms and the potential dangers to our livelihoods, to our lives, is the new norm. It is a norm that is not going to go away. And I am just going to keep it real. I'm keeping it real in that respect first. All right. Now, if you fully understand that, then as said, you have to now try and position yourself towards being better able to be resilient. And, moving from understanding the environment, it comes down now to you having the mindset or the desire. So where you are concerned, if you have the desire of being an entrepreneur, a question you should be asking yourself is why? do I want to be an entrepreneur? If it's a case that, say, for example, you are in one of those areas in Jamaica that's highly decimated, and you said to yourself, you know what, I need to basically earn more now to take care of what it is that is my new reality, which is to rebuild from the ground up. Question you should be asking yourself is, why is that important? That why will help you then know to understand how really deep you would have to dig to be able to at least push on when things get tough. Because the reality is, it is going to be a long road. And, it is not going to be a situation now where you can think that the solution, as it is, if it's a case that you're thinking about trying to get people to buy from your product, or if it's a case that you're thinking about trying to rebuild connections for your company or for your entity, all of that time is going to be draining, and it's going to be very uncomfortable before you can get to that state of comfort. So we're talking about a reality that can take months to years for you as an individual who may have been brought to your knees to get back up into a position where you can say, you know what, you have enough reserves, financial reserves, if you will, to be able to invest in infrastructural development, or to be able to invest in changing where you physically are located, or to invest in, say, for example, education. It's this investment is going to take time. And that's why I said, you mentally have to be fully aware that this is you trying to build yourself up for the long haul, right? So as I stated first, environment, having an understanding about the environment. And the second point I basically would have been touching on is you having the mindset to be able to push on as you see now that things are very hard. I would like to go even further to state that, I would have seen some articles highlighting that the Prime Minister of Jamaica would have been at least indicating that in terms of the economic shock, it has now been a case where they can amount it to approximately 32% of a GDP blow in terms of Melissa's impact. And in that respect, agricultural production is expected to sink significantly in the hard-hit parishes. And his plea is that other parishes that have not been so hard hit, increase the productivity to try and supply those hard hit areas. So this now shows that the dynamic in terms of the opportunities will shift, whereby the persons who may be hard hit in the hard hit areas, their agricultural lands will need time to first of all be cleared, to then basically be readied in terms of making sure that the pH or the soil chemistry is on par, and then ensuring that the drainage is on par, ensuring that the pests and having all the necessary inputs are on par. That's going to take time, and in that respect, other parishes should now take up the brunt to be able to provide where the shortfall is going to be. The Prime Minister has highlighted that is something that is an opportunity for individuals who have that entrepreneur eye and skill set in agriculture to be able to plug that gap. When I hear now that I will see the UNDP highlight that there's like over 4 million tons of estimated solid waste in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. My question has to be, as a country, what are we now doing, or what will we be doing to really handle all of this solid waste that is now going to be at our dumps? We're talking about waste that is not just zinc or ply, but we're talking about waste that is even electronic devices, and electronic devices have a battery source. And then now we have to think about the fact that these battery sources will leach into our environment. These same battery sources will leach into our groundwater systems. It can leach into our seas. It can basically be a situation where it ends up into the food web or the ecosystem, whereby we then not end up eating some of these sea animals and or plants that have a lot of these heavy metals, as an example. So we're talking about the risk of poisoning. That's something that reaches now into my head. And that is definitely something that we should now be thinking about. The recycling business is a major opportunity. When it comes to all of this waste, us having the means of separating our waste at that grand scale, metals from the bulk waste, to talking about battery waste as an example, that need is going to be there. So there, I'm basically saying that the mindset shift is critical for us to be able to see that in every problem there is a solution there. If I'm going to say that, boy, the reality of the people in many of these hard hit areas, as I would have heard many state, is equivalent to what you may see as being in a war torn area. What is going to be very critical for them is that they have the eye to be able to see where potential opportunities may be, right? So, I would say that even from the household level, making sure that you can do what you can do to secure yourself first in terms of your basic needs is critical. If the communications are being reestablished, as we're here now, Starlink coming on our shores, then this basically is indicating that, more than likely those same hotspots will be the new norm within the short term for those entrepreneurial minds to basically go there and to try and connect and to build their form of network base. The opportunity is there. You have to just keep focused on that opportunity. And that is basically what I am stating in all I am saying here, right? So just to sum up again on this point, in terms of the environment, the entrepreneurial mindset, and where the opportunities are, right? Agriculture, as much as the case where there is a shortfall in our traditional parishes that we would have been able to supply the local market, domestic market, and international markets, there is now the great opportunity for other parishes that have not been so hard hit in terms of, Melissa's wrought, to be able to up our production. Similarly, when you think about the fact that we have all of this solid waste that is now going to be built up within some of these towns that have been hard hit, there's going to be a need to recycle and or to basically, trade scrap metal as an example. The persons who are very witty in that respect and know the industry ins and out should be able to say more in that respect. Similar to that as well, if it's a case that we're talking about these communities that have been decimated, rebuilding is definitely not a key area. So obviously, all of the tradesmen who have the skill set of doing their building skills are applying their building skills, make sure that the connections with, say, for example, the MP, the councillor, in extension, the check, the NAA, see where that can come into play, right? It's about you pushing yourself forward to make yourself available to do the work that you see your skill set having the need for, and making sure that at the end of the day you can be able to really voice what it is that you can do in terms of the value you can provide. So in other words, be that salesperson for yourself, have that drive, have that focus, and be able to see in terms of vision how far your input can really go, right? Those are my points in terms of that point for the time being. So now what it is that I will drift into is on yes, the projections in terms of the reality surrounding entrepreneurship. So as indicated, still in terms of the kind of opportunities that exist. No, it's a case that we should look at what is the likelihood that those opportunities will remain as they are. So in the context of things, looking at what the need will be, we would have to obviously look at it from a short-term basis, medium-term, long-term. Your short-term reality would be more than likely to put food on the table, would be basically to be able to have shelter. And obviously, medium term to long term would then be thinking about building up enough reserves for investing in a strong infrastructural base, such as for home, and or making sure that you can have enough of a reserve for emergencies, such as the reality that Hurricane Melissa would have brought on us, the emergency whereby we're talking about potential damage to the investment, physical damage that is, the loss of revenue as a result of the fact that when this storm or another geo shock present itself, we're talking about loss of time at work. Loss of time at work brought in the fact that telecommunications have been interrupted, electricity has been interrupted, running water has been interrupted. Um, so when you take those things into consideration, then it's a case that what we should be doing is forward thinking. If I would have mentioned, as I did a while ago, that the likelihood is that Jamaica can be hit with another uh, intense storm come 2026, then we should also be looking at the reality that we need to be strengthening our emergency reserves, financially speaking, and even so in terms of making sure that we have other infrastructures, as an example, in place to be able to create a buffer. Um, Giving an example of an infrastructure that can provide a buffer would be what we're seeing with Starlink now. Starlink basically is like a third player in the telecoms industry, and in terms of the source, it's such that they connect primarily with satellite. So that basically helps to at least provide a speedy rebound in the event that when it comes to the actual reality that you have to shut down because there will be a thunderstorm, there will be strong winds. At least we know that we won't necessarily be cut off in terms of communication uh, in such a longer time relative to not having Starlink. So that is basically forward thinking. So seeing that as a country, we can see that the office of the Prime Minister is pushing the agenda, if you will, for Starlink, is basically them saying that as a country we need to basically be trying to create a buffer for the eventuality that this could be our experience again next year. So communication wise, let's do something to try and limit the kind of scale in terms of lack of communication that we would have seen with Hurricane Melissa. Not only that, basically, looking at alternative energy sources. So prior to Hurricane Melissa, as a country, we would have been talking about, renewable. Now, what it is that we have at least witnessed is that the main power supply would have had to be interrupted. And now it's a case that for many segments of Jamaica, the reconnection is going to take a longer times. And the recommendation by the Prime Minister for some of the electricity power lines to go underground is a valid recommendation. But what I would say, especially from my geo background, is that not all locations is suitable based on, let's just say, where we have active earthquake zones, or you're going to have where, say, for example, the natural waterways of rivers can go, and or we talk about sinkhole areas, etc., etc. So either way, the kind of recon work, mapping work that is critical to ensure that the engineers are fully aware that these are the areas that are less risky for the power grid to go underground is going to be critical. But what this now indicates is that as households, solar is more than likely should be a significant investment at the household level, at the community level, at the town level, parish level, etc. So moving forward, we should be seeing what it is that we are looking at today, and to say, what, based on what we're seeing today or what we have seen and experienced in Hurricane Melissa, this is what we should be doing to minimize the kind of impact moving forward, to mitigate that kind of impact. And it is on you as an individual to do this at your household scale. Assess your reality and to know that, all right, if you depend on the major supplier of electricity, as we know they are in Jamaica right about now, you should be positioning your resources towards trying to get solar, as an example. If you depend on the top two telecoms companies in Jamaica, as we know them right now, we should basically be positioning our resources towards getting, example, the Starlink, since that is the one that is on top of everybody's minds right about now. Those are just the forefront highlights that I'm trying to pass on to you. that you should be living not just for now, but you should be basically forward projecting what your reality may be a year from now. And seeing that, as stated, we have been hearing it, that climate change is a real thing. Irrespective of what we may hear other leaders state, climate change is the reality. And with it being said, the reality of storms being intense and or the reality of us experiencing much more frequent, intense rainfall, it means therefore that flash flooding is the main reality. It means that land slippage is a new reality. It means that many, broken roads, and pretty much we're talking about, thoroughfares being impeded or being impassable, and as such hindering economic productivity. That is the reality. And if you know that that is your reality and you're basically still of the view that, you know what, I'm still going to live at a particular location, or I'm basically still going to operate in this particular way, then that is your negligence. And that is something that you should not be doing. Because as we are seeing now, the kind of scale of disaster is significant. It is very significant. So as an individual, look at your reality, look at your property, look at where you're living. You know that basically certain areas have certain hazards, right? And we're talking not just about geohazards, but we're talking also about man-made hazards, right? Be fully cognizant that this is your reality and put your plan in place, projecting and looking at what are your investments and pretty much try and action it. Take it day by day by day, right? Make it be a case that you are using the plan that you have in place in a way that you can say, you know what, within these timelines, this is what it is that I'm going to do. All right. I hope it's a case that as I'm speaking right about now, I am not speaking in a way that you cannot relate. I will say that if it's a case that, you hear me say something and let's just say it just sounds like I'm just speaking as an academic, then make it known, right? Because at the end of the day, my purpose now is not to appear to sound as an academic. And it's not to sound as an individual who's trying to bash either. It is basically to try and put it in a way that is very pragmatic and realistic for everybody, no matter what kind of economic background you have, and no matter where you live in Jamaica context primarily, which is what I'm stating. Right. So as I've said, forward project, and I've also mentioned about the opportunities. So where I'm going to go now is talking a bit about how you can position yourself to be able to buffer, because more than likely, some of you would be saying that, all right, well, if, so for example, my salary is X, and I basically don't have any means of investing further, what do I do? So to assist you with answering that question, um, I will start with this, which is, first of all, look at what you plan to do in terms of, your new reality, the investments you intend to make in the context of a new reality. So keep in mind, I'm speaking in relation to Jamaica's reality. If it's a case that you see that your reality is such that, let's just say you live on the coastline and you basically are in a board house, and it's pretty much a case that it's one room, and you depend on the sea for your livelihood. And in that respect, uh, it's a seasonal thing. You have high season, you have low season. Where that is concerned, then that will indicate that where it comes to that particular source of income, you are limited in that respect, and as such, you should consider to diversify. So, as an example, if you know that you have low season time as a fisherman, then that low season time may be a good opportunity for you to transition into a complementary economic action or economic realm. So, it could be a case whereby, as an example, you are transitioning into the land-based agriculture, right? Providing some cash crops as an example. And or it could be a case whereby you can also consider the whole aspect of tours, because just jumping on this right about now, as we know, Jamaica is a popular tourist destination, and we do have the many excursions that take place on land. But apart from, say, for example, the 1 and 2 excursions I would be aware of, whereby we would move from, say, for example, out of the harbor that's off, go to the Keys them. I don't really know about any excursion that can take me to Goat Island, or any excursion that can take me to a popular location within or offshore where we can say, you know what, this is where we generally would explore for the fishes then. And you can have that kind of an education platform where you, the fisherman, using your tools, using your indigenous knowledge, as what Prof. Barker would state, late Prof. Barker, you know, that is an opportunity that you can be able to provide that complementary service. So it's still a case whereby you are somewhat in the industry of, let's just say, fishing, but you are not necessarily just depending on you having to go in the water and to dive for fish, especially in slow time. You can be providing consult in slow time in the form of offering tours and even coming on social media as an example, and basically providing a degree of consultation after a while, after you have gotten that kind of attention, right? It's all about having that kind of viewpoint whereby you say to yourself, okay, if I have this source of income, how can I complement it with another source of income? And that is what is critical. We have to make sure that we can be able to diversify our income streams, even if it's a case that we are saying that we depend on the sea, or we depend on the land, right? We can basically have many other angles that we can be able to earn in a complementary way. You don't have to think about trying to learn or to relearn, even though that can be something you do as well. But I'm saying within the short term, speed wise, right? Looking at the reality as it is, if it's a case that you can no longer farm on your land as it is, as stated a while ago, the Prime Minister has indicated that other parishes should up the kind of productivity. You as a man will have all your knowledge about how to grow, say for example, sorrel within a short time period, can be able to provide some form of counsel. So, it could be a case that you can say, hey, um, me is a farmer man with X amount of years experience in sorrel, and me can help you right about now. If you have the land, me can help you right about now to up your productivity. All you have to do is just make sure, say, oh, you and I have a discussion in terms of, what it would be my payout. Once it's the case that, we realize that, yeah, this work in this particular way. That's just an example, right? You just put yourself out in a way whereby once you have access to the Starlink, you show on social as an example, and you just highlight that this is how you can assist Jamaica right about now in the other areas of productivity to be able to supply and serve the country, which at the end of the day too can still provide you with a means of income. For the man them we have the taxi as an example, right? Man and man will have taxi, miss enough man will drive, and them know the road very, very well as an example. I mean, a similar thing again, which is connecting with other stakeholders in other key areas of the country that basically can have you be absorbed in, say for example, the tourism sector, whereby you are providing excursions as an example. So in that respect, you link up with, let's just say for example, a hotel. You link up with a villa and you state that, all right, here go on, we can come on socials, basically can talk about how we know the ins and outs of this particular area in St. Elizabeth as an example. And here go on, I can be able to provide the service of being your driver. And we can discuss whatever the rates will be, right? I'm just saying that with the kind of mindset that with the shutdown of opportunity in one regard, it can open doors for other opportunities. Once you have that mindset, that positivity, the possibility is there for you to be able to meet a short-term need and build on from there. That's basically what it is that I'm saying, as I have done right about now. So as I said, in terms of how you're going to position yourself, to sum it all up, it's basically a case where I have highlighted 5 E's. So to help you to position yourself for the opportunities as they present themselves, first E is education. So, many persons will look at social media and they say, boy, John knows that I'm not into social media. Or, I'm not really know how to use social media. The opportunity exits itself for you to learn. And it's not about you having to be into this thing where you have to invest into this one bag of halabaloo in terms of um, set up equipment and that kind of a thing. As you see what me I do right about now with my life right about now, if it's even a three people whatever on the live right about now, it's a case where I am pretty much having an audience and I'm basically sharing with that audience. And in so doing, it's my way of imparting. I have the reach in that respect. So, learning what it is that you intend to actually, I would say, invest in or to do is something that's critical. So education. Another E is exercise. And in this regard, exercise, physical exercise, we should not take that for granted to say that, oh, it's not about gym time, right about no. No, it's about understanding that exercise does have a very significant positive effect in terms of helping you to manage stress. So in this highly stressful time, the exercise doesn't have to be anything that is intense. You simply just getting up out of your bed or getting up from where it is that you are sleeping. And once you're up, you take some deep breaths and you pretty much go into a deep state of reflection. People will say meditation, other people will say that they're going into a state of prayer. Uh, you go into that state and you pretty much kind of prepare yourself and assist yourself with being in the zone to take you away from all of the negativity and to just help you to be in a state of calm. That is very critical at this point in time. As I've seen an article with Dr. Dayton Campbell highlight that, in his constituency, when he had his discourse with some of the families down there, one of the things that come across his mind, especially as a medical doctor, is that there is the situation that you may have many persons who are hypertensive, and these individuals not having their medicine or access to medication. It could be a situation that, by them being subjected to the stressful environment, it's like a ticking time bomb. And this is why, again, when you hear me talk about the whole aspect of breathing exercises, to help you to reduce the heart rate, reduce your pressure, to help you basically to calm down, is very important to help you to be able to withstand the kind of enduring reality that is going to be the new reality for many of our people in the western section of the country, in focus that is. Eat. So in other words, nutrition, very important. So obviously, as we can see right about now, the relief supplies going in is very critical for the sustenance of life. So being able to take advantage of opportunities will require us to have our strength, and being able to eat wholesome food is very important. Even those people that are within those hard hit areas, just keep your mindset on the reality that, if you can get access to seedlings from RADA as an example, and even if you have some plastic buckle where, say for example, you get water to drink in, and you just think about basically, stuffing the plastic bottle with some paper as an example to germinate the seed them, and or you think about just trying to grow what you can grow within the plastic bottles. That's just me basically trying to highlight to you that, there is opportunity, even if it's a case that your land cannot be utilized to provide you with the big kind of produce. You just have yourself use what you do have at your disposal to try and provide you with a degree of hope. So this is like gardening, and by just doing the gardening on a consistent basis, it at least helps you to see that there is definitely hope, because you can be able to bring forth the seedlings from the seedling stage and to get into a mature stage where it provides you with food to eat, right? So again, it's the perspective. So eat is a third E in terms of how you're going to position yourself to take advantage of opportunity. And then we talk about experiment. Very important, because at the end of the day, what I have observed in my time in terms of building OB fitness from the ground up is that people have this thing to say that, okay, if it is not perfect, then not do it. You know what I mean? Or if it's a case that is too risky, then not do it. And make you understand, there is risk involved in every aspect of life. even when it's a case that you decide to do nothing, there is risk involved in that. There is the risk that, basically speaking, you're missing out on the opportunity. So at the end of the day, it all comes back down to what type of risk are you willing to take for yourself. And in this respect, it's basically coming back again to the mindset. It still comes back down to your mindset. Experimentation is following the lines of the scientific process. By doing your experiment, by failing, if you will, you're supposed to learn. In other words, you're saying, you know what, I know that I should not do it this way, or let me try a different variable. Be open to learning, be open to experimenting, be open to trying, be open to realizing that something don't work, and if it don't work, experiment is very important. You know what I mean? It's not about trying to be flashy in this process. It's about basically trying the things and, knowing that not all things is going to work. You fail where you fail, and you basically build back up yourself again from there. All right. And the final way for you, or the final E, in terms of you positioning yourself to take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves, is to enjoy the process. As much as it's a case that it may be very challenging in terms of your reality, depending on what your reality may be, it is critical for you to enjoy the reality that you have life. And when you have life, it means that you do have opportunity. The opportunity is still there for you to be able to live in the kind of reality that you desire, the targeted reality, if you will. So, enjoying the process helps you to be able to not necessarily become so overwhelmed in terms of stress, negative stress. And at the same time, too, it helps you to always have a clear mind to be able to pivot, to reposition yourself. Very critical, because, and I would also even highlight the pivoting thing, because when we try so much to be too rigid in a career path or in our professional scope, then when you realize that that area becomes hit, and because you just become so focused on just getting, say, for example, that degree, or getting that kind of position, or getting that kind of experience, you realize that the market has shifted. You then know is like left flat-footed, because you're not flexible, you're not capable of pivoting. And that this is something that, say, for example, Melissa is going to highlight for many of us. Those of us who are not flexible enough in pivoting will be more so in a situation that is not going to be very well in a long-term basis. Right about now, we have to highlight that we can pivot, and we can pivot very quickly, and we can basically be able to adapt ourselves to our new norm. If that's very critical for you, right? And again, it comes back down to your mindset. So you get your background education, you go for your particular career that you want to go for, but you be fully aware that the world as it is not a static thing. So even if you think on to consider the reality that you say, you know what, you're going to be a medical doctor, you have to understand that being a medical doctor is not just about having the strong background in clinicals. You would have to also have a strong understanding about the public health reality. We're talking about epidemiology. You basically understand the reality that we're dealing with the non-communicable diseases, and the fact that environment, geo, is strongly interrelated with how we operate in terms of the biosystems. So in this respect, it means therefore that medical doctors would also have to have a strong insight in our geo. Vice versa, people who have a geo background should have insight in terms of how Hurricane Melissa has impacted the biosystems, not just humans, but we're talking about plants, we're talking about animals, right? So in this respect, the world on a whole has become a lot more integrated. And the career paths that we choose, whilst it's a case that we may have our specializations, we must, as individuals, as a collective, be fully receptive of the reality that every single thing is connected, every single career is connected. And this is why the whole reality of having multi background teams, or having organizations collaborate, that kind of a thing, is very important. I'm sharing this with you as an individual who is listening to this, because I need for you to understand that this is very important for you to be able to still thrive, irrespective of the fact that you may be hit with shocks or stresses that disasters or slash hazards can pose to your reality. Right. So another point that I'm going to want to highlight now is that adding on to what it is I just spoke about, in the context of understanding whichever career path or whichever career, industry you intend to compete in, you must understand these: who, what, where, why, how. And in this respect, I'm speaking in the context of competition. When we are thinking about rebuilding these towns, these cities, communities, we have to understand that as we do these things, there will be competition. And I'm going to speak in the context of, let's just say, for example, we have heard now the issue of persons being held up. And even so, law enforcement indicating that if you don't need to travel down to these places, don't travel. And it is their recommendation to ensure that you have your escort provided. Competition in this context, persons getting their relief and people just feel like, say, oh, you're going to them need to get to, or they need to take yours because for them are not enough. That's the reality. It doesn't matter where we are, no matter what kind of industry, in what state of our life we're in, we would have to deal with the reality that, if you're up on your face, other people still will take whatever you have on your back, even if you have nothing, and leave you in the dirt for face whatever demands you need to face. You need to just be understanding that that is just the nature of the reality. So you now have to know who your competition is. You know your environment. You then know have to know, say, all right, boom. Then the people, they're probably the people where basically watch me for stabbing on my back as an example. Or you basically say, you know what, me I go into this kind of a business. The man there are the man will basically control the market. Or them the people are the people will basically control the distribution network. You know what I mean? You have to know who, you have to know where them there, you have to know why they are your competition. You have to know how or what makes them your competition. You have to study the game. You understand me? I say, and when you do this day in and day out, you realize that at the end of the day, this is not a thing where it is like a 9 to 5 life. You understand me? I said this is a reality, that this is a 24/7 thing. So yes, you will hear people say that to be an entrepreneur, yeah, it's like you have to work 24/7, it's that kind of a thing. Yes, I saw it have to go. And if you talk about rebuilding your life from the ground up, you can't think like we say, oh, John was style, yeah man, it's a 9 to 5 thing. All if it's a case that light not there, as an example, and a moonlight you probably have. But I see a moonlight that you probably have for use for could pretty much help you to guide your steps them, to guide your thoughts them. That have to be your reality. You understand me? I say it's the kind of mindset that's very critical to be able to take you no matter what kind of reality you're faced with. That is pretty much what it is that I'm trying to highlight there. Barriers to entry. If you decide that you plan to enter into a particular industry as an entrepreneur, what are your barriers to entry? See, a barrier to entry could be education. So you're probably going to hear some people say, all right, you're going now. You can't be a medical doctor unless it's a case that you have, first of all, the degree, and then secondly, you need to make sure that you have your license. That's a barrier to entry. You know what I mean? Similar case for another traditional career in law, as an example. Another career is accounting, the quote unquote traditional careers. So you have to know the barriers of entry to whatever area in terms of career you would like. And in a similar fashion, if it's a case that you intend to compete as an entity, you have to know what are the barrier of entry. It may be a case that if you want to get some kind of grants from the government, right? A barrier of entry to get a grant from the government as a business would be to register your business, right? So know the barrier of entry to whatever kind of industry or what kind of target that you may have set out for your organization, for yourself in the economic sense. Um, Property protection, very critical. So as we are seeing now, we're hearing that there are insurance claims. So, we will think about trying to minimize or mitigate risk to some of our physical assets, such as motor vehicles, such as houses, by, transferring the risk to a third party in the form of an insurance company, right? So that is important, yes, because if it's a case that, we spend all that we need to spend in terms of time, energy, effort to invest in a particular asset, and not to necessarily ensure that we also put the necessary investment towards protecting it in the form of insurance, or in the form of getting tracking device, or getting let's just say, for example, the alarm system for a third party security company to monitor our homes when we are no longer there. Then basically speaking, we are leaving our assets up to be in a situation whereby we can end up in loss. So, no matter what it is that you intend to invest in, you should also be thinking about how you will go forward in protecting your investment, right? So insurance is very important, for those entities or for those households who have been hard hit and, thinking about trying to rebuild, then we have to think about insurance. But obviously, what we also have to consider is that the reality, as you've heard me state earlier in this live, is that um, environmental shocks in terms of geohazards, weather hazards, or even geologic hazards such as landslides and earthquakes, is growing in terms of the frequency. And this means that the risk of Jamaica is going to grow, which means that what we can face as the market is increased premiums in general insurance. So I can foresee that most likely we get hit. It could be a case that we are talking about having to pay more to insure our physical properties. So look out for something like that. That may be the new norm, and it means therefore that it's going to, provide or add as an inflationary pressure, and it means that as a workforce, we our disposable income will reduce even further, and we have to find other means to supplement our income. Another thing that we should be looking at is scalability. And what this basically is speaking about is that, if you're to think about your earning potential, how by you doing your particular economic activity can it multiply in relation to your inputs? So the thing that I would hear or see many people talk about in Jamaica's context as regards to businesses is the saying that, grow your business, grow your business, grow your business. And what people need to understand is that business growth and business scalability are two different things. You can grow in the context that, say, for example, your business has grown from earning $1 to $10, but in so doing, so has basically been your expenditures, because of the fact that you have to now think about, employing a team member as an example. That team member can help you, yes, in this respect, but in the context of scalability, the team member is not necessarily multiplying, relatively speaking, the kind of output that the entity should be able to provide as an example. So in this respect, the business has grown, but not necessarily scaled up significantly. And this is why the major competitor, which is what you should be aware of to us as humans, is AI. Because AI now is that shock in terms of the economic sense, workforce sense, that basically can multiply the kind of output that is pretty much unlimited in that respect. So, you have to be aware that you are no longer just competing against humans, you're competing against AI. You're competing against AI in business, you're competing against AI if you're going to think about trying to go for a job, right? And so now you have to think about, how can I communicate my value to, let's just say, for example, the target being a clientele, or let's just say, for example, a kind of customer, and or an employer. How can you do that relative to the reality that he or she may say, but I have access now to this technology, which makes our output 10 times the kind of output that we would get from 10 employees, human-based employees. That is now the new norm. So you now have to be able to make sure that you study the competition of AI, where AI is likely to go in the context of the industry you may be targeting, or in the context of the company you like to work with, and in the context of your career? Where is it likely to go in the next 5 plus years, 10 plus years? You understand me? I say 20 plus years, whatever is the lifetime, the lifetime of your economic productivity years. And you need to then know, see how you can be able to provide value that is greater than what it is that the AI can provide in the context of scalability. All right. So you again, to sum up this era, if we're going to think about you trying to um, venture into a particular business space or venture into a particular job market, you must be considering barriers to entry. You should also be basically considering the property protection, how you're going to protect your assets or protect your investment, and you should also be considering the scalability versus business growth. Right. um, the final point is me now just basically talking a bit more on the job market. So as I would have highlighted in my notes here, the job market of Jamaica is dependent on the creative market. And in other words, what it is I'm saying is that we cannot necessarily be talking about jobs if we're not also talking about the success of businesses, because the businesses is basically what is going to be providing the main source, yeah, the main source of employment. So yes, we can talk about it in the context of the private sector, public sector, but in the scheme of things, primarily speaking, we're talking about private sector as the main employer. And we're talking about in the context of being able to create employment, to scale, to grow, quote unquote, right? To provide opportunities for people to say, you know what, yes, I would like to go into this organization and work. If there are no entities there, then there basically can be no jobs. If there is no demand, there basically can be no supply. So at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we are still supporting our entities. We are basically still driving the, the kind of engine that is critical for our job market to develop. And this is why I'm even doing what it is that I'm doing here. Because for me, I believe that my biggest impact right about now is not going into the communities one at a time. It's basically to try and speak to people as I'm doing now and to use these platforms in a way that can help to multiply the reach of what it is that I have to say. So even after this live, to basically repurpose this video in a way that basically people can reshare in multiple formats. That is how I can see myself being able to, contribute towards the economic viability and longevity for Jamaica primarily, as I am focusing right about now. So again, if we talk about jobs, we have to talk about businesses. If our businesses die, jobs die. So we have to protect businesses, in supporting businesses, in creating businesses, in helping businesses to be able to grow in their size so that they can be able then know to say, you know what, okay, yes, I'm going to take you on. So as an example, I'm going to say this here. If you are not aware, we OB Fitness need a marketing assistant right about now, because as we have now created our plan for 2026, the plan for 2026 is very deep and very broad. If you would like to learn more about that, you can go on our website, www.joinobfitness.com. You will see a pop-up about 2026 integrated personal training system. When you go through that from start to finish, at the bottom of the blog post, you will see the link there for the internship. This is my means of basically taking somebody underneath my wing and to provide him or her with the insight, with the grounding, with basically the kind of guidance that eventually should be able to have that individual lead in the projects as highlighted in that blog post. That's an example of what I'm talking about here. The businesses such as OB Fitness, by growing, creates opportunity for a job market. So that is what I'm saying. The job market depends on the creative market. Right. as another point is that the job market depends on you in terms of the value you can provide, and you know have to think about how you can quantify your value. So what I'm saying in this respect is that, again, if it's a case that you are targeting a particular entity in the context of applying for a job, then you have to now look at, how do you communicate the value you can provide for the job you are applying for. And the value, you have to look at it in terms of how is it quantifiable. Understand that you're trading your talent and your time for the entity. So in this respect, the entity is benefiting and you are being rewarded for the trade-off, be it the inputs in the form of your talent, your time. You have to be able to communicate how it's quantified. Don't just go into the job market with saying that, okay, I see the salary at 3 million for the year, as an example, Jamaica dollars. And you see that that is what they must say. But then no, even though you know say you need the $3 million, or even though the $3 million is what it is, you can't even know for yourself what kind of value you can provide, how much value you can provide, right? Because in essence, if you don't know that, you're not gonna know if you're sell yourself short, and though you're really and truly not gonna know how much you can grow in the capacity. You know what I mean? It's very important that you are fully aware of that, because as stated earlier, the entire world, not just physically, but even in terms of industries, are highly integrated. Your skill set is critical in the context that the more knowledge you have, the more you upskill. It is supposed to be a case that you can be able to increase the value or the output. If you are not fully aware about how you can increase that value or output, you're wasting your time. And obviously speaking, you're likely wasting the time of the entity as well, unless it's a case that them just good with what it is that you are dealing with. But in the context of me, I'm all about making sure that we go deep in terms of, how may I create value. And hence the reason why I know in terms of my approach, I make sure, well, I'm grateful that I have a broad background. So geo, bio, martial arts, even had a taste of military as well, fitness. And people will be like, oh, so what is OB fitness? OB fitness encapsulates all of that. And I'm glad for that. And it's basically me saying to you, you don't have to limit yourself. Whatever your passion is, know your passion, know what you're good at, integrate it. Take your time to learn the ropes, get your experience, and create your expression, right, into the world. That is basically the value. Make sure you understand how the world works. When you do understand it, you go up on your straight and your narrow. Probably going to take you a longer time, but it don't really matter, because you know that once you have your assets and you know how to protect your assets and to build on your assets, it doesn't matter where you go, you must be all right. That's basically the whole point about it. I'm a testament to that, right? So, yeah, man, make sure that you know how you can quantify your value, know how much you're willing to sell for the value you can create, and you know basically how much the buyer is willing to pay. So at the end of the day, yes, we all know about the context of the negotiation. You need to make sure that you accept negotiating. Some of us, we love to shy away from talking about, money. We shy away from the reality that we're going to say, all right, boom, somebody say, all right, how much you charge? I'm going to say, oh, just give me what you have, man. Listen to me, man. Know how much, what is the value of what it is that you have to offer. If you're give for free, you're still supposed to can say to them, so listen, this is valued at this, and this is the reason why I give for free, as an example. But you have to know. And they themselves know, should be able to understand based on what it is that you have to say, why the value is what it is. They don't have to agree with it. They don't have to buy it, because keep in mind that in business we say you have to know who your buyer is, or know who your market is, know who you attract, know who you repel. I know who I attract. I attract like-minded individuals, people who are serious about what it is that he or she wants to achieve in life. Serious about the reality, that it's not just about the fluff, it's not just about the surface, you have to go deep. And those kind of people are not plenty in this world, even though we should be. See? I know who I repel. People who are just all about the superficial. People who basically will just look on the hype and just run off with it. You understand me? I say people who don't really critically assess certain things. Those are the people I repel. People who basically look for weaklings. Those are the people I repel. I'm good with that. I'm in a business. I'm not for everybody. You should not be for everybody too. You should not be accepting that you are for everybody. No. Know your value. Know what you do. I've spent years on my straight and narrow platform doing what I have been doing, grinding it out. People look for me at UE when we just start OB fitness, and people I say, yo, you don't have a gym, so yeah, nothing I go on for you. Or people, even from Geo, when me I take on fitness and I do what me I do with, I say, yo, you know, left from Geo and gone to fitness. Like them I look for me like me a joker. When me decide to me go in and be an officer in the JDF, people look for me and I say, oh, how you for dash for the opportunity there? Again, it comes back down to knowing what it is that you are doing. I knew that it would be hard. I knew it is going to take me years, over a decade. I know, but either way, I committed to it. And hence why now when we look on the shocks them as me see them right about now, we can talk what me I talk about. Me not just come off and I talk like a man who basically just live on a hilltop. Me go through it. Me know me I talk. So you know as a person that listen to what me I say. And if you're serious about what it is that you've heard me discuss, know that first of all it starts with you. You have to go on your knees when nobody else not there, and you have to be able to go into that zone to say, all right, Lord, why? What is the reason behind all of this? What am I supposed to do? What is my purpose? Why is this my purpose? And you have to keep on, go back over and over and over and over. And then know you're going to get some insight and you have to test it. And you have to realize the boy, I don't start, probably not how it go. And you have to go back again and you have to get frustrated and it have to drain you out and you probably not have nothing to eat. But it will come once you stay grounded on your journey. Even if it's a case that you have been brought to your knees, you stay grounded on your journey, you commit to what should be the key, which is at the end of the day, you are a vessel. You're supposed to be grounded in the reality that the Lord is in control. From you have the life, you have testimony, you have power, and you have to just commit to learning, knowing the game, seeing how things work, test it, seeing, try over and over and over. And if it's a case that you see that entrepreneurship is for you, you go feed. Start first by making sure you take care of yourself, you take care of your household. You can do that well, you take your time and you invite other people into the business, knowing that the people that will come is not everybody that basically will stay. So you go. You see, some of the people that are going to try to take your thing, so you go. So you have to be able to create. That's if an entrepreneurship. If you say to yourself, say, you know what, we just want to get our work, because I want to make sure, say, oh, you're going to pay my bills at the end of the month. If that's what you are pre, make sure, say, you know who you are trying to seek a work from. Make sure, say, oh, you're going to, you can validate that that entity is not just a short-term entity where you can say, all right, I just have 3 months alone then can provide me with work. You're supposed to can know for yourself that, all right, if you're going to do that, even so, that you are considering alternatives on the get-go. You should not be in a state of relaxation. Not at this time. You have to make sure, say, I work on buffers. So even if you see, say, yo, you can see 100K I sit down, but you not have to use that every month. You have to make sure, say, that 100K that work for you. You have to think about how that 100K can be used in the event that a shock can come at any point in time. If, God forbid, you can no longer work because you no longer have your hands to use, you can't use your foot then. What do you do? This is how I think. I know some people say, you know what, yeah, man, OB, I want to work with you because you bad on the training and this, that. And every single day I say to myself, you know what, something can happen to me at any point in time. That's a key man risk. Any point in time, something can happen to me. I have to make sure, say, there are means in place that can at least have the entity outlive me. And hence the reason why the integrated personal training system, as an example, is there. Hence the reason why you see me create all the content when we create. If you go up on the OB Fitness YouTube channel, you will see geo content, you will see fitness content. Similarly, on the website, you will see them thing there. Them there. Because at the end of the day, I said to myself that if I can no longer walk, if I can no longer provide the kind of training that I would have been able to provide leading up to this point in time, those things should be able to provide some form of value. The team, what is being built, should be able to provide some form of value. So you have a pretty thing. You have to do that. So I've been speaking for over an hour. I've not gotten any feedback physically, but I have seen that there are a couple of you who have managed to stay on the live. And I do hope that at the end of the day, you have gotten something of value, right? And yeah, I feel fulfilled to know that this is something that I have shared. So this is part one. I'm doing this for another 4 weeks. So next week, Saturday again, around 8:30 time, that I will be live again and I will be talking again. And let me see what I have. Did I write down what I'm supposed to talk about? I think I write it down like this, but I think it's supposed to be about the agricultural sector. So it's more so me just giving a little specialization to that area, considering that agriculture is a key GDP contributor to Jamaica. So that's the plan for that. But yeah, again, if you just come across OB Fitness, I do hope that this live for you was worthwhile, right? So thank you very much for tuning in. Big up yourself, and I hope you can move forward and do what you can do to be sustainable in your endeavors. And where applicable, you can be able to help other people as well. So